fighting between Israel and Hamas is the worst that we've seen since 2009.
What began as a limited conflict has escalated into a major Israeli ground offensive into Hamas-held Gaza. It's resulted in hundreds of deaths.
Here's what happened and what it means. It started with the murder of 3 Israeli young men in the West Bank. They were students, they were kidnapped and killed. Israel responded to this because it believed that the killings were done by Hamas operatives. It arrested a large number of Hamas people in the West Bank and launched airstrikes into Gaza. Palestinians from Gaza fired rockets in response. Israelis were furious, and a Palestinian boy was murdered by 6 Israelis, essentially, from what Israeli police say, as an act of revenge. Moreover, his cousin was beaten in Israeli police custody. This led to a wave of anger on the Palestinian side. On the morning of July 8th, Hamas launched a wave of 40 rockets in the direction of Israeli towns with very little guidance or aiming. They don't often hit targets or produce many casualties, but nonetheless create a climate of terror inside Israel. These rocket attacks were the first that Hamas had claimed responsibility for since 2012, the last major conflict. In response, Israel launched more strikes in Gaza as part of what Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said was an effort to make Hamas pay a heavy price. By July 11th, 100 Palestinians had been killed by about 1,000 Israeli airstrikes. By July 14th, the total casualties had exceeded the 2012 conflict.
And then on July 17th, Israeli troops entered Gaza to root out tunnels into Israel that would allow Hamas to strike Israeli targets or to send soldiers in on the ground to attack Israeli cities or military bases. After the ground offensive, casualties have skyrocketed.
We've come a long way from 2009 when the Obama administration came into office thinking they could get the two sides on the same side, let us get a peace agreement done, let alone the heady optimism in the 90s that we saw about Israeli-Palestinian peace.
The sad past that led to an incredibly devastating ground offensive in Gaza has illustrated just how hair-triggered the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is. Even slight provocations, even things that might not be planned by one side or the other one, can lead to massive escalations and violence. There's just too much mistrust and too much division to be able to solve these problems anytime in the near term. And that's the sad truth of this conflict.